Rick, you ready?
I'm afraid of the topic.
Don't be afraid of this one, man. This is a good one. So Rick, I thought we'd do
Okay.
a show about things that can bring joy and presence.
Oh, tell me yours. I'm dying to hear it. Tell me, please.
Well, it's a couple things, man. One of the things is just being around good people. And when I say good people, that people that are interested in being kind above everything else. They're not walking around, leading with their titles or whatever role they have to be. They are really identified with, whether it's parent or CEO or doctor or wellness specialist or whatever that is. You're just a human being, man, who's just connecting and seeing the humanity in other human beings. And in that, you're able to just be really rooted in presence and enjoying each other. So that helps me with both. It brings me tremendous joy because, when we can see each other, we're not identified with our positions, whether they're political motivated or derived. We're not making enemies of people because of some kind of prejudice or judgment that we have. We're just seeing each other, man. And so that's one of the things that does it for me. Is just being around people that are on a path, not the same path as I am on or that you're on, but on a path that helps them be peaceful, kind, and compassionate to everyone else. That brings me joy and it helps me be present. What about you?
Well, that's terrific, Keith. I want to take a little different take on it. What brings me joy is unwaiting.
Mm,
Unwaiting. So, what I want to talk about for a moment is the idea of taking away instead of adding to your life.
yes.
So, instead of buying a new car or another car or another set of skis or whatever the material thing is, to make a practice of actually getting rid of things. So a lot of folks have the rule in their closet, if they haven't worn it in a year, they give it away. I would say if you haven't worn it in a month, you give it away, even if it's a $600 suit, right? There's somebody on the planet who could use that damn thing, so give it to them. So my thinking is, you hear so many people in the springtime, especially when they do their spring cleaning, and they say, "Man, I got rid of a lot of stuff. I feel great. I feel lighter. I feel like I don't have the responsibility for a lot of stuff that I used to carry around." And I think that's because things actually, on some kind of level, and I can't describe it, but for me, I feel like there's a responsibility that you take on for everything you own. If it's 6 cans of beans and 5 spatulas, that's part of the weight that you're carrying around in your backpack, right? So if you think of it like as a backpack with all your material things in it, how much lighter is it to go on a long walk, which is the allegory for life, by taking out the stuff that doesn't serve you or that you don't use, or donating it to other people, which in turn gives you additional joy. So for me, a lot of my joy is tied up in trying to think how I can unweight, how I can eliminate as many responsibilities as I can, including the responsibility I owe to all of the material things that I think I require. And as I unweight, I find that I'm more in touch with who I am. I'm more in touch with nature because there's not a barrier between me and the real world. I think the material stuff tends to take on a life of its own. And so I like the idea of trying to get rid of as much material stuff as possible, instead of the opposite, which is what our culture does, tells us we have to buy, or we're not real people.
Oh, Rick, I love that, man. Following along that line, I thought of another unwaiting that brings me. It replaces the suffering with joy and peace and being present, and that's unwaiting from thoughts and concepts and judgments that really create separation between me and other people or situations, and unwaiting from that. And I just think about, like, since I moved out here from the South to Arizona, I had a lot of barriers in place, man. And it took a while, but I just unweighted from a lot of those misconceptions and a lot of the conditioning of Southern living. that I kind of took on over my young life. And then when I got older, I shed some of that and then took some other things on. And now I'm just really like every day with the practice, I find myself like uprooting more and more barriers that keep me separated from people. And I could have easily have erected more barriers and fences and whatnot in the pandemic or with the, social justice conversation or with the election. But instead, man, I just kept digging and I just kept, eliminating, barriers. I don't need this. I don't need this. This makes me separate from you. So those are some of the things that have been really helpful to me in terms of unweighting is in the material things, but also the mental concepts and stories that I have about people. Here's one that I just started to do recently.
Oh, good. Let's hear it.
And man, one of my friends, her name is Jenna Husky, and she is a physician that I have come to know. And I am just so moved and inspired by her. One of my friends, Brian Hardaway, introduced me to her. And you've heard me talk about Brian, who I have great admiration and affinity for. But Jenna, she introduced me to adult coloring books, man. If you would have told me years ago, that Keith, you're going to be coloring one day, I was like, I haven't colored since first grade. That's not happened. I went out on her recommendation because I trust her. And I got, because I'm in grad school, I'm, doing Mayo Clinic, and then I've got ToBeRe, just some things going on, nothing more than other people. And so, but I found that taking a little bit of break between the stuff that requires such deep focus to just color. And so, dude, so I have to show you some of my art. It just came mail this week, but I'm gonna be so present. And I'm the kind of guy, like, self-admittedly, man, I don't tout myself a lot, but I was a heck of a colorer back in kindergarten. I mean, I had some skills, man, back in kindergarten. And so, it's one of those things, Rick, where you think like, you romanticize about how you did something in your youth. Like I was a heck of a dancer on the dance floor. And then I remember as a kid, I had roller skates and I felt like I was a disco guy out there with the roller skates doing the splits and everything else. Rick, man, when I was in my mid 40s, I went roller skating. Rick, it was a disaster. I was like, I wasn't nearly as good as I thought I was. Yeah. So either I lost a step, lost some moves, or I was never that good before. But that's not the point. The point is not about being good. The point is about being in the experience. So I'm going to not bring on that perfectionist of I got to get into the lines perfectly and trace every line before I start coloring. I'm just going to sit down and just create whatever that masterpiece turns out to be, because the point is to detach from the obsessive thinking in the mind and just be present. And Jenna's told me, man, she's gone in her little office after she's taking the kids to school, and if she has a day off from being at the hospital, and she sat down and she said, okay, I'm just going to sit down for 10 minutes. It turns into 2 hours. That's the kind of joy that I'm talking about, man, just being lost in it. So I'm excited about it, man. I have to keep you posted, but that's an example of something that can bring you joy and reach and root you in the present moment.
Yeah, I think that's the concept of flow. Siska Kimeli, I think his name is, who wrote a book about flow, the idea that you're so wrapped up in something that it's completely relaxing, but at the same time, completely creative and completely self-interested. You're really involved in it and you're in that moment. I think Dr. Husky's got a great idea. And I'll tell you, if you want to mail that stuff up to Sedona, I'll put it on my refrigerator.
Dude, let's do it. There you go. Hey, I need a little art gallery, man. So
there you go.
Let's start with Sedona.
Hey, it's an art capital, at least in their mind anyway.
Dude, I mean, Rick, how cool would that be that our friends who listen to the podcast, that they ordered an adult coloring book, and I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put the one that I got in the show notes. But if they ordered one, and then, they would send me a snapshot of it, and then I could kind of like show it during our podcast. Like, hey, this is what my friend Ava did. or, this is what my friend Lindsay did, or, Michelle, whoever, that they did one of those, Donna, they did a picture and we just kind of showed it, man. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That'd be awesome. You know what I think also? Why don't you add, you have your practice and your bullet points about what's to be done. I would include coloring. Do 20 minutes of coloring, at your highest peak or when you take your break. You can't do it if you're a doc and you're doing rounds, but when that time comes, when you have an opportunity to relax, maybe you involve yourself in 10, 20 minutes of coloring.
Yeah. Oh, Rick, I love it, man. And I can think of some of the healthcare providers, healthcare workers, physicians and non-physicians who also do incredible and important work, that when they come out of like a really, challenging situation with the patient or a researcher or phlebotomists who are doing a lot of, lab work, they can take that moment for themselves too. They're eating lunch and they're coloring while they're eating lunch, man, to kind of detach from what they're doing, because that work is on pause while you're taking a break or eating lunch. Why not lose yourself, or not even lose yourself, find yourself something that's going to bring you joy and peace, man. So, man, I'm up for it, man.
And anything that gets you away from the damned electronic leash, because that's not relaxing. That's the opposite of flow. That's the opposite of being present, being creative. It's the opposite. It's more adding to the responsibility, adding to the frustration, adding to the anxiety. So you've got to make a rule that when it's time for your break, maybe you get all your electronic crap out of the way. And then when you're eating your sandwich or whatever, you're doing your coloring. So you got to get rid of the electronic leash, get rid of the damned email and the texts and all that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly what Jenna has told me. She gave me, like, here's how I do it, Keith. And so I'm so excited, man. But yeah, so I'll let you know, man. Is there any tips you have or anything you want to share before we close out?
Always bring bond money when you're going to Mexico. I would say that would be my only tip for today.
Okay, Rick, I appreciate that. Man, I love you, man.
I love you. Adios, babe.
Adios, man.